Ladies and gentlemen, you've tuned in to the Incomplete Skeptic, and I welcome you. Anyone that's heard my podcast before knows that I believe anyone and everyone has a voice that can impact the world. The Incomplete Skeptic seeks to free minds from self-imposed maelstroms, not M-A-L-E, but M-A-E-L, stroms. Our primary purpose is opening minds and hearts in equilibrium to shift consciousness. As lofty and ideal as it might sound, this pathway to peace reflects a paradigm balance of polarities that will help heal our fragile, sometimes fragile world. Today's guest is Marilyn King. She is the founder and president of Beyond Sports, which she initiated in 1981. As a two-time Olympic pentathlete, she is wholly qualified to impart to students the real-life thinking skills used by Olympic athletes. Marilyn studied kinesiology at Cal State University, Hayward, and wants to make your most cherished dreams come true, and I trust you have some. Welcome, Marilyn, to the Incomplete Skeptic.
Yeah, I'm just delighted that you invited me, and I love your introduction because it involves both heart and mind, and your belief that, you know, we all have the ability to have an impact. So we're right on track. I'm digging this already.
All right, awesome. Glad to hear it. And I've heard some of your story, and I'm excited to hear some more. We have some dear, this will be transparency notice. We have some dear friends that mutually we love and respect. And I've heard your stories, and it motivated me such that I thought, okay, can I ask her to be on the Incomplete Skeptic? And you said yes, so I'm so happy. And what I'd like to do is talk about what motivated you, or what got you into being into the Olympic mindset that you discuss in your story, and how can we apply this maybe to the common person? Because I think we all have hurdles that we could, that's where the term probably comes from, hurdles to overcome in life. And in today's society, we're a little stressed. We've got inflation, we've got social some social issues going on, and that's true everywhere at any given time, I suppose, but it seems to be magnified. And I'm seeing people getting stressed. Some of my friends are feeling depressed on occasion. And it's like, okay, these hurdles, how can we throw this Olympian mindset at what challenges that we're dealing with? So please feel free to help us. Help us, Marilyn.
Well, I'm happy to share with you what I've discovered, and if you find it helpful, that's great. It's been my intention and my experience. There's actually two stories that I think are good precursors to whatever questions might emerge. But one is, I often have to dispel the notion on the part of listeners in terms of my being an Olympian. And I was an Olympic pentathlete. I actually did 5 events: hurdle, shot put, long jump, and 800 meters on 2 teams, and then was second at the Olympic trials when we boycotted 1980. But my point is that when we talk about mindset, because my dad was in the military and we moved all the time, I didn't do very well making friends. And then I found out if I went to sports after school, it was easier to make friends. And I was never the best. I was always like second or third, but that didn't matter. It fulfilled my need, which was an easier way to make friends. And then what happened was one day I was at a track and field event, and they were hosting the Eastern States Pentathlon Championships. And I'd never heard of the event before. And I figured all these girls would be coming in from up and down the East Coast. And the next announcement said, only 2 girls have shown up and we need 3 for a legal competition. And so I thought, what the heck? And at the end of the day, I was the 3rd best on the whole East Coast. And that's so,
Dang.
it was like, up until that point, I had thought maybe I could go to the national championships on a relay team sometime because I'm not good enough in the hurdles or the long jump or whatever I was doing. So to wind up the third best on the whole East Coast in something, I think like most people, it just inspired me to like, man, I'm going to train in this event.
Wow.
And the next year, the same two girls showed up and I beat them. And my little town of Staten Island raised money, and no money for my coach or my mom. And they flew me to California to the National Pentathlon Championships. And that's the day my mindset changed. And this is one of the themes that runs through my work, which is, I went there and I was kind of like, deer in the headlights. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm blah, 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 all this, stuff going off. And at the end, there were only 16 girls that showed up from the whole country. We're talking, I'm not young anymore. So we're talking 1966. And I placed in the top 10, which I thought was great. I'm in the top 10 in the whole country. The Olympic Committee said, we're going to take some of these girls to the Olympic training camp to raise their performances so they can meet the international standard. I went to the meeting to see who these future Olympians would be. And I didn't expect them to invite me, and they didn't. But what happened changed my life. They invited among the girls, two girls who I had beaten. Now, one of them looked like, ta-da, and she had a horrible technique. If they worked with her, she looked like the kind of person that probably could be an Olympian. But the other girl that they invited who I had beaten, I looked across the room at her and it was like, man, we competed against each other, the whole time. And not only did I beat her, but I'm a better athlete than she is. And if the Olympic Committee, i.e. God, thinks she can be in the Olympics, what do you think my next thought was? Well, if they think she, and I'm better than, yeah, that means I could be in the Olympics. This was such a stupid idea. This was like ridiculous. We're talking about the Olympics. And I flew home and I kept trying to put the idea out of my mind. It's like, oh, there's faster girls, on the East Coast. There are all of these justifications for why it was a stupid idea. But every time I tried to set it aside, my mind went back to the same thought. If they think she can be in the Olympics, I'm better than she is. That means I could be in the Olympics. I couldn't get it out of my mind. So there is a paradigm shift right there. Even though I didn't believe it at the beginning, there was no word for this at the time, but the psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. The mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. I know what my skill sets are and how many people can run faster than me just on the East Coast, but I'm better than she is. That means I could be, and I could not let go of my current reality or this crazy idea. And so my mind started to do what cognitive dissonance is all about. Your mind will try to bridge the gap with new thoughts. It's like, wow, well, if I am going to be in the Olympics, I can't go to upstate New York. I have to go to California where the good coaches are. Well, how am I going to do that? My parents don't have money. I'll have to get. So my mind started creating these new ideas and the steps I would have to get to that challenging thing. So part of what I do now is I teach cognitive dissonance by design. Mine happened by act, but we can actually create a process by which we create that. I know my current reality, this is a crazy idea, but if I can hold on to both of them, I will have some new thoughts that will lead to new behaviors and may bring me, to this new place. So fast forwarding from that point, I went back and, all these new ideas. And if we fast forward, I made my first Olympic team. And I woke up every morning just imagining walking into the Olympic Stadium with one of those USA uniforms on. It was like the most amazing thing I could imagine. It was like you could offer me $1 million or be an astronaut, but to be an Olympian. And so that's why I love your introduction that talked about, it's not just mind, it's also spirit, which we could call, I call it passion, right? I was passionate. There was nothing more important that I could imagine being. And my thoughts started to more align with that crazy idea. And it played out into behaviors. So by accident, I wound up aligning body, mind, and spirit, or what I call passion, vision, and action.
Hmm.
So I'll pause there for a moment because, there's another story that, is kind of what launched me into trying to figure out how is it that ordinary people like me do something extraordinary? Great. I love that you have the graphic there of the passion, vision, action. And I don't know if you have the second one that shows what happens if you've only got 2 of those.
Yeah, I should have resized it. I see now that it kind of is edging out the the extremities. So,
Pretty, but it really is. The heart is passion, the eye is vision, and the little running person is action. So it's really body, mind, and spirit, but I call it passion, vision, action.
all right, cool. I'll make sure that the picture is better when we go into. Well, I'll get people your link.
Yep. So, any comment or question about that? Because
Well,
the story that launched me into, what I've done for the last 40 years comes from my 3rd Olympic team.
you did remind me of a couple of things that I'm not a competitive person. I've never liked competition, and for myself, I don't think there's anything wrong with competition for other people as long as they're not bullies, and I think they made a mistake by pulling out of the Olympics in the 80s, and it's like, isn't that like what you don't want to do at the Olympics? You just, but when I was in prison, I don't want to make any of this about me per se, but it's what you reminded me of. I was working out every day, and I was going to school, and I was boxing, and I was doing a lot of things. And when I first got in prison, I was soaking wet, weighed probably 137 pounds or something, 140. I was skinny. I had degenerated from being in jail for a year, and I was a heavy smoker. So anyway, when I got there, I started working out, and I did end up quitting smoking, but I had gotten a trainer, which is my good friend, and he was like a martial arts instructor, and he was in the Army and as a drill instructor, and so I had somebody that basically put me through ranger training without the guns, and I didn't even know he was doing that. He just told me one day, well, you've completed ranger training without the guns, of course, because we can't have guns here. And but I would run a lot, and I would have to stop and cough up blood, because my lungs were really, and I kept powering through it,
Wow.
and it sounds unhealthy, but I just, there's something in my head that says I can do this. I just got to keep going. It doesn't matter if I can't breathe. It doesn't matter I'm coughing up blood. I'm not stopping, and after a while, I quit coughing up blood, and my lungs cleared, and it was a very difficult journey. But one day he wanted me to run a mile, and so he took out the stopwatch, and I ran a mile, and he said, there's something wrong with the stopwatch. You need to do that again. I said, I just ran a mile. You want me to run a mile again? He said, yes, just, because I tried to not ask him questions, just do what he said, and you've probably encountered this in as Olympian, right? You just do it, and of course I'm totally guessing there.
That's okay.
So, and I ran another mile, and he just said, he stopped the clock, and this time I'm really wiped out, and he says, you just ran under a 4-minute mile twice in a row. And I said, and if someone would have told me, Marilyn, that that I was close to doing that, I'd have probably stopped. I'd have probably thought, nope, this isn't possible. I can't do this. And what I've heard in your story, and what I'm gleaning is that you don't say no, you just say yes. You got your picture in mind, and I don't think I could have done it that way. I needed to not know personally, but it'd be really cool if there's something in my consciousness that would say that I can overcome my difficulties, because I have some difficulties, and there's part of me that says, why am I at this age and I'm still struggling with some things? What do I throw at that? Maybe you can plug your story in a way that will unravel some of that mystery for me.
Yeah, and the story of what happened in training for 1980 does speak to exactly what you're saying, but I'm curious about what in the training time, not just in the time that you responded to his request to run the mile, but in all that you were going through, I'm curious, was there some idea or thought or feeling you had that it's like, I'm in this particular situation and I'm embarking on this set of activities? Was there something that you assumed or thought or felt was on the other side, that if you did this would be a good thing or something worthwhile achieving?
I think I wanted, I've always been kind of a codependent, kind of a people pleaser. And I think I was interested in, rising up to the challenge that my trainer had given me,
Right.
And so there is that. I don't think I was doing it for me even, I was doing it for someone else. And it's like when I was young, I had a bully that you'd bully me, and I would let him bully me rather than bully my brother, because I would stand up for my brother.
Yep.
And if he tried to bully my brother, I would get in his face, and then there's nothing I could do. I mean, I'm in like the 5th and 6th grade, and this kid is like almost 6 foot tall. He's
Yeah.
like an adult male,
Yep.
and so that was so in other words, I do think I would do Olympian things for others, but not for myself, and I think, I'm a little bit, there's something wrong with me. It's like I operate by necessity almost, if there's a dire emergency, then I can perform,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
it's not an emergency, there's some part of me that just doesn't deal with it very well. It's like, why does everything have to be an emergency? What
Yeah.
do you do with that?
Right. Well, two things pop up, and then I'd like to share the story, because we could spend a lot of time,
Mhm.
pulling some things apart. But one, I definitely saw the you who does things, for other people, and the strong, the passion part for your brother, and you had an image of what needed to happen, and you did it. So that was an example in my mind of, body, mind, and spirit, passion, vision, action, alignment. But I'm curious, and maybe another time we would talk about your experience in being willing to go through the training. And what you said was it seemed like it was for him, but it would be fun to explore at some point that it could have been that, given the situation that you were in and whatever your history is, that what might have been operative is that by fulfilling these and showing up and achieving and fulfilling at those levels, that you would be held in his esteem.
Yes.
So if someone comes from a situation in which you don't get a lot of esteem, and my assumption is one who's in prison, there aren't a lot of people who think highly, you're just as a generic, uninformed
A
populace.
number or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So anyway, so that would be fun to explore. But let me jump into the 1980, because it really does speak to a number of things that we're talking about. And so if you just imagine, so I'm in Munich in 1972, there I am, I'm told how old I am. I was like a spectator on the field, and there are lots of lessons that I learned, but I wanted to go another time. So I went to Montreal in 1976. And this time, I actually got to perform and place 16th at the Olympic Games, which, one would think 16th in the world, but, if you really know what the world was like, probably the Russians and the East Germans left 2 or 3 women at home that could have kicked my ass, but we're only allowed 3 in each event. So
Wow.
anyway, But, I was one of the
Mhm.
top female athletes in the world, in 1976. I wanted to go one more time. And I never thought I could win a medal, but I thought that if I performed really high, I could make some of the medal winners nervous.
Mhm.
If
I like it.
did that, yep, if I did that, there would be younger, really talented female athletes who would say, wow, if Marilyn can do that, maybe I could win a medal. So that was really my motivation. And then what happened that changed everything was I was the head women's track coach at Berkeley. I took a year's leave of absence for the 1979-1980 season. I had just entered into my winter training. It was November of 79, and my car was hit from behind by a truck. And it wasn't a big, ugly accident, but it produced a bulging disc at L5 in my back that was misdiagnosed. So I kept thinking it's like a tweak in my neck, and in a couple of days it'll be gone. And then I'm going to fast forward here, but I went to, all of the best, doctors and practitioners in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it kept being misdiagnosed, and whatever they gave me to do wasn't effective. So, and now it's December, now it's January, and we're starting into February. I've been training 6 to 8 hours a day, 9 out of 10 days a week for almost 15 years. And I could do none of that. I rolled out of bed like a log. I grabbed onto the dresser to stand up. I couldn't hop from foot to foot. I couldn't hurdle, couldn't work on the highest height. I couldn't do zero of that. And by February, it's like, oh my God, there's younger, faster, more talented athletes here, training. I've got to do something. So I got films of the world record holders in all 5 of my events, and I watched them for hundreds of hours. Frame by frame, slow motion. When I was bored, I'd watch them backwards just because it was. And after I did that for a period of time, I was like so sick of these films, I would go stand on the track for probably 3 to 4 hours. And I would go to each one of my events, and I would imagine either my training or my performance. And right before the Olympic trial, so now we're fast forwarding to the summer, I haven't come out of starting blocks. I haven't worked. I've done none of that. And I had them give me what's like a Novocaine injection in my back, so I wouldn't feel that nerve going off. And I went to the Olympic trials for the 1980 Moscow Games, and I placed second.
Wow.
Out physical training since the previous November in hurdle, shot put, high jump, long jump, 800 meters.
So zero training basically, and yet, wow.
And so when I did that, I went back to UC Berkeley. I quit my coaching position because what happened was impossible. Not only was I not the greatest athlete of natural gifts, I hadn't trained since November. It's just not possible. And so I started to explore the field of exceptional human performance to try to figure out how do ordinary people do something that's just not possible. And the graphic that you showed, that's passion, vision, action. It was 3 years worth of research. And where it began was I came to understand what everybody now understands about imagery, visualization, and mental rehearsal, that it affects every cell of your body. We can make ourselves sick. How we think impacts our health and well-being as well. It affects, your performance. If you're about to give a speech and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do terrible at this, and I'm afraid you won't do that well. But if you do what I did as an introvert who had to learn to public speak, I told myself the 3 C's. I said, I am comfortable, I am confident, and I'm connected. And I thought, well, you know what comfortable feels like? What would that be like on stage? Oh, that gave me a different feeling. I'm confident. Well, I know what confidence feels like. What would that be like on stage? And the third one was I'm connected. If I just connect with people. So I worked on the 3 C's and became a really good public speaker as opposed to someone who's terrified. So my point here is that your thinking affects your health, your performance, and your future. As long as I thought I might go on a relay team someday to the nationals versus I could be in the Olympics, I had new thoughts that led to new behaviors that produced a different result. So that's why I like the second graphic, and I don't know if you have it, but I can ask people just draw a little heart on a piece of paper, draw a little eye for vision and a little running person, and put your hand over the running person. And ask yourself, what happens when someone is passionate about something and they think about it really effectively, but they don't do anything?
Mm.
Or their game plan is not effective. They might have a game plan, but it's really not effective,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not going to get you there, right? Or what happens when you're really passionate about something and you're really active and doing lots of stuff, but how you think about it is what I call stinking thinking, as opposed to Olympian thinking, right? And that's where I do most of my teaching, right? So you can be passionate and really busy, but you're not going to be very effective. And then the third
Yeah.
2 out of 3 is what happens if there's no passion, but you're a good thinker and you've got a pretty good game plan. You can be moderately successful. So I know that's kind of hard to assimilate in such a short period of time, but that 2 out of 3 shows you that you need all 3. And when you are passion power, it's not a goal, it's gold. What makes your heart sing?
Hmm.
What matters? And that's a courageous act. I wasn't courageous, it just like happened to me, right? But when we dare to imagine, what would make this lifetime worthwhile? However much time, what would today? So it's passion powered. And then when you align your thinking and have a daily practices that align those things, that's when you ordinary people have the opportunity to do extraordinary things. And I'll say one other thing and then open it up for your thoughts. You opened up by talking about and saying your belief that we all have the ability to have an impact. And you might look at Olympians or people who were born with a silver spoon or somehow got lucky or whatever and think, that's not me. That's not like most of us. But I go back now to Greta Thunberg. Here's a teenager on the Asperger's spectrum who was so upset about what was going on in the Swedish parliament that she sat outside on the ground in front of the building with a handwritten cardboard sign. And now there are young people all over the world every Friday in the streets who are inspired by her. And she goes, in their face at these big global conferences and stuff. So I really applaud you, Timothy, because we all have the ability to have an impact. It might just be in your neighborhood or in your family, but I believe that what we do has the ability to have a much larger impact if we dare to imagine that we matter.
Yeah, I do try to radiate kindness when I can, but I want to do it organically. So I go inside and I feel it, and then I move, And
Yes.
I didn't know that story about Greta. And, I was diagnosed autistic as a child, and I don't know if that's a good diagnosis or if it was just the abuse that was getting misread. And they didn't know about the abuse, and then I did, and I was quiet about it, so, and I thought I was told that it would be disloyal to reveal that,
Yes.
and there was some sense of strange sense of loyalty to somebody who didn't give a rip about me other than to use me, and so I can look back now and see that I was being set up, and I can also see where maybe they misunderstood. But what if I could have been both? Maybe I have this autistic spectrum, thing going on, and some other things, but PTSD from prison, and I'm functional and the like. I'm not I'm not cowering somewhere, and I used to freeze for 15 minutes, and just my heart would be palpitating, and my nerves would be going crazy. But being in sobriety, I worked through that without, I chose to not do drugs to deal with these things. And
Yep.
And it could have possibly killed me to opt out of antipsychotics or something for all I know, but I just wasn't going to do it. I was going to
Yeah.
trust in my higher power and the things that I had, been successful at before. Persistence, is one of my strengths. And I don't easily give up. Even if I'm a continual so-called failure, for some reason I keep coming back and I keep trying,
Yeah.
and I guess I'd rather die trying, but I don't want to even set it up to say I'd rather die trying. It's like I want to live successfully.
There you go.
So so I don't know if this really applies to what you're I don't know if I'm being germane to your direction here, but what do you do with that information?
Well, first of all, I personally believe that we all have gifts. And I believe in, and this may be a little romanticized, but that in much smaller cultures, whether it's small towns or tribes or whatever, that when a child, is young, people recognize, oh, this one has, great strength, or this one can really tell, what the animals are doing. And this person, seems to know what herbs to do or has good. So I think it was more important that gifts that children had got recognized and developed in order for the whole community to survive. And we've gotten away from that. Some people are lucky and have a family or community situation where their gifts are seen and they're given opportunities. But there are a lot of us, who go through our whole life just kind of, doing the best we can and believing that, that's the best we can do. But I personally believe that we all have gifts, and, whether you're on the spectrum or not, I have, some experience with you in which the things that you share in the circles that we're in, I find very insightful. Number one, and number two, that the way you offer them is very kind of just allowing yourself to be vulnerable, but also in a very humorous way that makes it easy for people to take in, what you're saying. So I have experienced what I believe are some of your gifts.
Yeah, I'm fond of saying I'm too dumb to stay unhappy for long. And my foster dad, who was not the abuser, by the way, not the sexual abuser, but in any case, he used to say that I was the smartest idiot he ever met. And that kind of hurt, but you get used to things not being what they, and you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's just like, whatever. That's what he says. He thinks he's funny. And he's an alcoholic, and so he'd laugh a little harder than maybe, So, but the, in God's economy, nothing is wasted. And I know that not everyone believes in God, and I don't expect my viewers to, and nor am I. I'm not an evangelical sort of a person. I'm comfortable with the higher power. And, but Bill W., the founder of the 12-step program, one of the founders, he said that in God's economy, nothing is wasted. And to the alcoholics that are the hopeless variety, such as I was, when I drink, I sell my freedom for a drink over and over again, and I end up in prison. And in my case, I ended up killing someone driving under the influence. So, there's a price tag. Sometimes it only kills us, the alcoholic themselves. And then sometimes it really impairs other people's lives, And I didn't know that was possible, that what I was doing could injure or kill somebody. And I should have known, but I didn't know.
Well,
And yeah, go for it.
Well, I would even extend what you're saying to the larger context that we're all living in right now, that I believe that the constant barrage of information that is out there through most of the media outlets has people feeling dispirited and impotent to really do anything. The domains of problems are very deep and they're complex because they're all interrelated. And when all you hear, or the vast majority of what you hear, is, how awful it is important for us to know the things that aren't going well or are going really badly. But this is without having turned the light on to other things that are also going on. And for me, because I've lived in a world of people who think like I do and believe that, we can make it as a planet and a species. That's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like that, it's like, well, it's not impossible. Just from a mathematical standpoint, it's not impossible. So if it's possible, then it begs the question, well, how could that be? And I live in the world of people who determined that we had to stabilize the population. So we're not going to have 20 billion people on the planet. We're going to have 9 point something by 2050. And other people believe that as long as people were hungry, that we could never live in peace. So even though the population has gone up, the percentage of people dying, the number of people dying from hunger has decreased. So there are people who have felt like this was the key issue on the planet that was needed in order for us to make it as a planet and a species. And I live in the world in which people have dedicated their lives and built on the lifetimes of others who've been solving these problems. And most of the problems that exist have been solved somewhere. So all of this to say, right now, for me, I believe that just like you were saying, in terms of that what you're thinking or your behavior not only affects you, but that it can affect others. So if you buy into the story that we're going to heck in a handbasket and there's nothing that you can do about it that will have any impact, one of those jokes says there's only two kinds of people in the world, those believe they can and those believe they can't, and they're both right. So if you believe there's nothing you can do to have a positive impact on what everybody wants to have happen, you're right. But I live in a world of people who believe they can and they are. And so I'll just kind of drop the baton on that one.
Trade it off. I'll take it for a second. Then I run out of gas and give it back to you.
Yep.
Then there was a time where I've always been more of a lover than a fighter, but I didn't always know it. And there was I had worked out really hard for those few years, and then I one day realized that I had gotten to the point. It's like when I first started working out, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I would sleep like 12 hours a day because I was recuperating and I needed it. And then slowly but surely over about three years, one day I realized I'm sleeping about 4.5 to 5 hours a day, and I'm not tired.
Yep.
I'm high functioning. I'm mentally acute. I'm learning well, and discovering things in ourselves that we thought were impossible. For me, I had to experience the impossible before I even considered that I was living below my abilities, and I remember practicing for the prison Olympics, if you will, but I was trying the discus. And I had studied up how big the circle was supposed to be, and I made a chalk line and I practiced over and over and over and over and over, and I wanted to win this, And then the day before we were going to do it, one of the guards, they call him a square man. He's a civilian, but in authority working for the gymnastic in the like rec area. And he said, well, that circle's the wrong size. We're going to make it about half that size.
Whoa.
And I said, well, no, I know this is the right side. And he said, no, it's not the right size. We're changing it. And this is just, and he, I was not popular. And I was, he didn't want me to win. Basically, he was trying to change the rules at the last second. Well, he'd have been smarter to not tell me until that day, So, and I thought, okay, fine. I will practice doing it within the smaller circle. And I did, and I still won. So I was like, and, but there was a time where I got into a fight in the cafeteria with a guy that was a much better fighter than I was. And he was in good shape, but he wasn't in good enough shape.
Mm.
And we fought for about 15 minutes, and I couldn't even land a blow on the guy. He was so fast, he was so good. But I had trained so hard that he ran out of gas. And when he ran out of gas, he was like a rabbit, and I could just do anything to him at that point, And so I just started pounding on him, It's like, well, you ran out of gas and I haven't. So who's going to win this one? And then the guards all jumped in and to surround him and protect him. And I jumped up into the air over the top of the guards, literally. And I'm not saying that my feet jumped over the top of the guards, because that's not what I mean.
Right.
But my arm was over the top of the guards, and I came down and I smacked him in the face while I was surrounded by the guards. And I said, F you, and I called him a name. And he was shocked. The guards were shocked, and I was kind of shocked. It's like my trainer said, he even told me this, is that if you continue training, it's like you're fighting, you're fighting, you always train as if you're actually fighting. You don't train to train. You're training for success. You're not training for, so when you're quite tired, you quit. No, those are the times you don't quit. And it paid off. I thought, okay, I followed his advice. I did this, and I was successful, So for whatever that's worth, but it's the idea of doing the impossible. I should not have been able to beat this guy, but I did,
Right.
So never quit, never give up. And I've got that part down. But yet there's this voice in my head that says it's not worth it, and nothing's ever going to change. And how can you know that beautiful side of humanity, but yet still have that voice lingering? Have you ever run into people like that? Is it more common than I think, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're just surrounded by, I'll call it underachievers, right? And messages about what is and isn't possible. But both of those stories that you told, both the discus story and the fisticuffs that you said, I mean, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I heard passion in both of those stories, right? I heard vision as in what you thought. It's like, oh, well, I'll show you. You can make the circle half the size, and I'm still going to, right? So you had, and then you went about and did things. So you aligned body, mind, and spirit, passion, vision, action. And I think the same thing is true in the fisticuffs. And what I ask people is to go back and remember the last time you set your mind to something. And somebody said, oh, you can't do that, or don't be stupid. And something inside you can actually feel it in your body. It's inside your body. And it's like, I'll show you. And when people go back and remember a specific time, not just like, oh yeah, no, remember a specific time. What did that feel like? What was the passion part? What was it that made it so important to you? And what were the new thoughts that you had to have in order for that to happen? Because it hadn't happened before, but now all of a sudden something grabbed a hold of you and you decided, and that was cognitive dissonance. It's like, wow, how could that happen? here's where I am. These new thoughts lead to new behaviors and increase the chances. So I have a quick little story I want to tell you because you brought up discus. This is one of my favorite fact stories. A dear friend of mine, Stephanie Trafton Brown, was a discus thrower. And women in the United States had never even made the podium in 30 years in the discus. Americans just didn't win gold medals or medals at all in the discus at the Olympics. And Stephanie was a friend of mine. I had already retired. I was already teaching what I was teaching. We had conversations often. And she said, you know, Marilyn, I just had this crazy dream. And this dream, I just saw myself standing on the top step. She was training for Beijing for the Olympic Games in 2008. She said, I just saw myself standing on the top step, you know, at the Olympic Games with the gold medal step. She said, it's just, you know, so just kind of crazy. I said, Stephanie, do not let that go. Just hold on to that. Just keep, you know, keep that uppermost in your mind. And then what she did was a friend of hers had gone to Beijing, and she said, go to the discus ring in the bird's cage, bird's nest, where the track and field would be, and take a picture from the discus ring. She got those, she blew them up, and she put them in the corner of her garage so she could imagine standing in Beijing in the Olympic Games, you know, before she ever went there and wouldn't be intimidated. So fast forward, I hadn't been to an Olympic Games since I had competed. I wanted to go to Beijing, but I kept thinking I don't have the time or the money and, you know, all of that. And I had gone to Chicago for a gig, and somebody said, oh, have lunch with my friend. And when I sat down with my friend's friend, I had realized that when people would say, are you going to the Olympics? I would say, well, you know, I don't really have the time or the money. And I realized that wasn't Olympian thinking. So I came up with a new phrase. And anytime somebody asked me, you know, are you going to Beijing? I would say, well, you know, I really want to go, but I haven't been invited yet. And I sat and had lunch with this person in Chicago, and she asked me that same question. And I said, I really want to go, but haven't been invited yet. She said, oh, my brother is the president of YPO in Beijing, the Young Presidents Organization, and they host all these wealthy families. I'm sure he'd love to have an Olympian on his, you know, staff. For all these
nice.
So
you set it up.
They sent me airfare, and I got to hang out with all these rich people in Beijing. And I tell you that part because the last day I was supposed to come back home a few days before the end of the games. I didn't have any tickets, you know, to athletics. I finally get a phone call and they say, oh, we're leaving in 10 minutes. We've got an extra ticket. I wind up going to the track. I'm running up all of the outside, and I look inside the tunnel, and there up on the leaderboard is Stephanie Trafton Brown's name in number one position.
Nice. Whoa.
After her, when she went into the final, she qualified from the qualifying rounds. She got into the final, and in her first throw of 6 throws in the final, forgive me, she threw the shit out of the discus. She threw it like in English, not meters, but she threw it 2 feet further than anyone in the entire rest of the competition on her first throw.
Wow.
So here Stephanie kept envisioning herself on the top step. She imagined what it would be like, and then she did all of the training she needed to. So all I'm offering here is there are stories after stories after stories of ordinary people who do things that are extraordinary, if not impossible, because it matters to them more than anything. There is that drive. I won't give up. It doesn't matter what hurdle you put in front of me. I will find a way to get to whatever that goal is. And they have new thoughts that lead to new behaviors that increase the chances of that happening. Ordinary people do extraordinary things all the time, every day. It's in each and every one of us when we align body, mind, and spirit.
Are you familiar with the law of successive approximations?
No?
You probably heard of it, but not in that term. But it's just one of the ways they have people overcome their fear of something, a phobia. Like if you're afraid of going up in elevators,
Yeah.
you know, so you're afraid of heights or elevators, whatever it is. But what they would do with the law of successive approximations, they'd have the person walk toward the elevator And even if it's walking toward it from outside the building, I mean, you start from where you feel like you're stuck.
Yep.
And then if, they try to get you to move like one day you might go a foot further or
Yep.
2 feet further if you can, even if it's only an inch. But it's successive approximations, and you keep
Gotcha.
moving forward a little bit, and then, and then slowly but surely, eventually you're going to be facing the elevator, and then you might have to reach out to press the button, and okay, tomorrow I'll get an inch closer to pressing it, and then another, and eventually the door opens, and, of course, and you've overcome your fear.
Well, I would say that at that moment, they still have to continue with exactly what you were saying. The door opens, but they're still afraid to go in.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Watch it close and walk away. Yeah.
Right. Yep. I love this.
Right. Yeah. I was just abbreviating the idea because I didn't want to overtax it, but yeah. And eventually a person will get to where they can go up and down. It's like, where's my next hurdle, and they might be parachuting, eventually, and heights mean nothing to them anymore,
Yep.
and
Well, like I saw it happen en masse, because in my day, not that many girls and women did sports. And then when like the running boom happened, and now all of a sudden they're making outfits for girls and women and shoes, because I wore, anyway, it doesn't matter, I won't go back there. But what happened with the running boom for women is, I can't tell you, hundreds of times I heard women say that they never thought they could complete a marathon, and once they did, they knew they could do anything. So that's that shift.
Yeah.
And there are people who have accomplished certain things that now it's like, wow, I did that, I can do anything. So there's more to be revealed. The whole notion of, fear and anxiety. There are really very effective ways to address that might be fun to talk about another time. But I know we've had quite a lengthy interview here, and I don't know what kind of time we have left, but I love hanging out with you, Timothy, and I love the times that we have in these other contexts. So,
well, yeah, this is, this is opening doors in my mind here, and I'm trying to contextualize and put it into perspective. I'm kind of like, okay, ex-convict. I'm more than my mugshot. I get all that, and but I am a success story. I mean, I've been out of prison quite a long time, and I've been sober a long time. And, I believe in confidence without conceit. But there, I don't want to be falsely humble either, but I've noticed in life is that when you try to walk taller on some people, they want to cut your head off to make you the same height as everyone else.
Yep.
And what I want to do is hang around with people that are taller and bigger and stronger and smarter and etc. if they will allow me to hang with them, and because I want to grow, and I think humble people will tolerate a certain amount of people like me. They might call it baggage in some cases, but not always, because it's interesting how I can challenge people's paradigms just by my presence or existence, and I'll throw out ideas there, and that's where I think my higher power makes good use of my strengths. And but now I'm listening to you, and I'm putting some of these ideas into place and picturing myself being successful. It's like a vision board on steroids, but of course in the Olympics, you don't want to be taking steroids, so maybe it's not the best example. But, it's like singing is a passion for me, but not my singing myself, because it's just like, I could drive people away.
So let's just halt for a moment. Let's just halt there.
Okay.
Right. And just reflect everything that we've been talking about, and that comment, right? If you love singing. Maybe you just love hearing singing, and that's perfectly fine. But if you would love to sing,
I do.
and to be able to do that, you might not wind up being, whoever you might, really think is like most amazing. But as long as you hold that belief and that silly thought that, I could drive people away, that's a thought that goes over and over and limits your ability to achieve whatever level of joy. So
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to do cognitive dissonance by design.
I love it. Cognitive dissonance by design. Lock it in, people.
Right. Cognitive dissonance, like dissonant sound.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance means the mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time, but do it by design. So I'm gonna, as a friend, I'm gonna come back to you with this one at some point.
Okay.
Current belief about your singing capabilities, but those are thoughts. You have a desire to really enjoy singing. I'm guessing.
Yes, I do. Yes.
So if you would just really love to be able to sing both for yourself and maybe bring joy to others, right? I mean, that already changes your biochemistry. So let's.
I felt it. That's funny you say that, because I literally felt it. I
know this. So then there's that stinking thinking that, well, yeah, but I could drive people away. It's like, kick that shit to the curb. And just say, it's like I imagined myself walking into I couldn't even imagine competing. I just imagined being in the opening ceremonies. So I don't know what the image is for you, but maybe it's at your birthday party that you've got permission to sing your very favorite song. And not only does it bring you joy, but people around you are like, holy moly, we had no idea he could do this. So all I'm asking you to do is to kick that other thought to the curb. And every time it comes up, just kind of go like that and flick it up. That's an old stupid.
No. I like it. I like it. Next time I see you, I'll.
When is your next birthday?
I'm a early sun in Aries, so it's in March. It's coming up.
All right, so
late March.
It might not be this March, but maybe it's the following. But anyway, pick a time, pick an event that you
or
can.
My sober date, August 19th.
Just like the elevator thing.
Yeah.
Right. Might be kind of hard to imagine, on August having that show up, but it's like, oh well, can I imagine practicing singing, or can I?
I can only imagine.
So I'm going to be your nudge.
Okay.
On one for August. We're going to talk more about the detail, but I can't let it go by what you said.
Okay, I'll work on it. I mean, being an introvert as well, I mean, I don't come across as one when I'm speaking, but it took me about 8 years to not want to. I'd go to the bathroom and I'd be gagging for 15 minutes and wanting to throw up, and sometimes I'd even literally have diarrhea before I'd speak because I'd be so terrified.
Yep.
And it took a good 8 years. Seems like 8's a magic number for me. There's many things that took me 8 years to overcome. And
April, May, June, July, August. That's only 7 months. So we don't have 8 months till August, but
oh, okay. Well, August is the 8th month. So I don't know. We could try it that way. And it's like I was dating this girl and we were going out. I went over and picked her up, and her dad says, well, make sure you're home by 8:15. And I said, oh, great. Middle of August. Yeah, you got it. It's a Stephen Wright joke.
I'm going to stay on you, my friend.
All right. I appreciate that.
I love singing. I love, and I have no aspirations in terms of, what we just talked about, but I'm going to be your nudge around this one. I
had no aspirations until today, so thank you for that. Hopefully I can follow up on it.
I'm going to push you one more thing. You said I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
But that's also a notion that there's an efforting here. It's like enjoy every step of the way between here and that joyful moment when you just let her rip.
All right.
Okay. This
Well,
was great.
thank you, Marilyn. And I appreciate you're letting me take this personalized direction. And what I'm hoping is our listeners will have heard a question maybe that I posited that aligned with their questions. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and I know that's how I am when I listen to stories and people that are inspirational, which you certainly are. I glean something from that and I walk away a better person, you know? So I feel like your objective and your practice in life is to walk into a situation and find it a little better than, you know, make it a little better than how you found it originally. And I try to do that too,
Yes.
but now I'm going to tweak those thoughts. Okay. So I'm going to try to not, no, I'm not going to try.
There you go.
I had a girlfriend that used to say, well, I'd say I'm trying. She'd say, you certainly are. And, but even repeating those stories, it's kind of like that setup. We need to reinstitute everything. It's like, don't even hold a thought that you don't want to create as your future.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Particularly if you repeat it over and over again. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get mad. Your mind is seeing you angry in that situation. It's like you're practicing being mad. So anytime you hear yourself say, I'm not going to do something with some energy, know that you're projecting energy to your brain, and your brain thinks that's what you want because you're doing it over and over again in your brain.
Yeah, it doesn't know the difference, does it?
Right. And the other thing is, when you said try and you caught yourself, which I really liked, what I challenge people to do is anytime you hear try come out of your mouth, bring it back and change the word to intend.
Okay.
That creates cognitive dissonance because you said, oh, I'm going to try to be there on time. Your brain is seeing all of the problems. But if you say, I intend to be there on time, your brain goes like this. It's like, holy mackerel, I have to pack the kids' lunches the night before because blah, blah, blah. And I'll have to, you start to see the solutions. So change the word try to intend.
Do you have any favorite movies that inspire you?
Unfortunately, you're talking to someone who has rarely gone to the movies because of when you train 6 to 8 hours a day in 5 events, or you're focused on, that we could see peace in my lifetime, doesn't leave a lot of time for movies. So the short answer is actually none come to mind. I just don't have very many that I've seen.
That's legit. And what about books? Or I know it takes time to read a book too, or maybe CDs, or I mean, you said you watched hundreds of hours of the women that were competing and working and the like. I don't know if I put the word in your mouth, women, but you probably watched anyone.
Well, I watched the women's world record holders in each of my five.
Okay.
So the answer to your question is, I am always, it's like what you said. It's like, I trained with men because there weren't women who were, high enough achievers. So in terms of my aspiration around speed shifting, to the next evolution of peace, I'm always reading things about people who are focused on solving global problems and initiating systemic change. So all of the systems are broken, and there are people out there, who already know how to get from, where we are to, there are countries whose political systems actually work pretty well, and that most of the people vote and they're well informed, right? So our system is, in my opinion, broken, but there are people who are already paying attention to how do we get from where we are. So my point here is, in terms of being inspired, my mentor is Willis Harman, and he's no longer physically present, but he wrote a book called Global Mind Change. And so, people who are just, I'm always out there looking for the people who I can hear in their speaking that they have an aspiration for something and they're passionate about it, and they're doing something. So, you know, I'm inspired by lots of people, and I'm sorry nobody comes to mind at the moment.
Willis Harmon?
Yep, Willis Harmon. He was the
Okay.
president of the Institute of Noetic Science, NOET.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I wondered where I'd heard that. It's like, that sounds
Yeah.
really familiar. Duh,
He
okay.
was my mentor. He took me
Mhm.
under his wing. He
Wow.
saw that, you know, my conversation about the peace team, and if people thought about peace the way Olympians think about gold medals,
Ooh,
you'd
that's
be clear
good.
about the goal, right?
That is
You'd
good.
know
Yeah.
what the strategies were, you'd know what your role was, and you'd have daily practices that aligned with that. So Willis Harmon was my mentor, teacher, and I continue to be guided by his vision.
Maybe you're channeling them now. I don't know. You know, sometimes I think we get taps on the shoulder by the other side.
I have been tapped many times.
Very cool. Well, you know what? Let's call this a wrap. I want to thank you for being an inspiration to me, and I really, really hope we can help people unplug for the matrix and radiate kindness and bring peace to our world. And, you know, we're all about the pathway to peace, man, and repaving the road with love.
There you go.
I love you, my sister, my friend, and peace to you and yours, and we are one. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Incomplete Skeptic. And if you have any questions, put it in the storyboard on YouTube, and I'll look into that and do my best that I can to get you an answer. If you have a question for Marilyn, I can always email her, and I'll maybe, if it's okay with you, maybe I'll put an email to you in the credits, or should I just?
You can do that, and also feel free to give them my website, which is www.waybeyondsports.com.
www.waybeyondsports.com. Yeah, that I do have, and I'll make sure that it's in the creds. So thank you again. Namaste, my friend.
I look forward to when we connect again in any way.
All right.
Bye for now.